You're listening to Nightmare on Film Street. The current time is 6:66. Traffic is clear ahead from here to the afterlife, but it's hell outside. For the next hour, you're on Nightmare time. So, let's give a grave welcome to our hosts, John and Kim.
Hello again, fiends, and welcome to Nightmare on Film Street, horror for the casually obsessed. I'm Kim.
I'm John.
And today we are hitting up some J-horror. We are talking about Pulse from 2001.
Yeah, some classic J-horror, too.
And this is one that I don't think either of us had seen before.
Nope.
We'd seen the 2006 remake,
I'll be honest,
Craven's.
I think I skipped that one. I don't know if I've seen that one.
Oh, you haven't?
Yeah, like it came out around that sort of Americanized J-horror area, and I was like, I think I could skip this one.
Yeah, I don't remember it being one of the beloved J-horror remakes.
There are very few American J-horror remakes that are beloved.
I think it was like the beginning of the end for like the Americanization of Japanese horror. And after seeing this, I really want to revisit it because I remember having no idea what it was about. It's just be like, I don't understand these leaps. And this Pulse, don't understand the leaps. But watching an adaptation of it, I can be like, oh, they kept this.
Adapted from our man Wes Craven. Like, surely I think you had tried to... That's how we wound up talking about Deadly Blessing. You're like, Pulse was written by Wes Craven.
I keep trying. It's a very Nightmare on Film Street movie, John, and I think having done its OG, it is inevitable to get Wes Craven's Pulse on here.
There's some movies we've been circling around. Fear.com's another one of them, and Pulse is also... We're here talking about it today,
they would both go together really well.
Perhaps one day. Yeah, Pulse, first time watch for the both of us, but totally creepy. Like, I gotta say, like, there are, three good things about Pulse as a person who's never seen it before. We've got some J-horror certified skittery creepy ghosts.
Yeah, it's like some with hair in their face is a must have.
Yeah.
Lots of creepy eye contact.
That's enough to get you these days, right? Like, oh, people are making eye contact. Good thing number 2. Ghost mold. Ooh, spooky ghost mold.
Okay, well, don't say it like you don't mean it. Ghost mold, motherfuckers.
Hey, if black mold is enough for you to just, like, condemn a house, ghost mold should be enough for you to leave the country.
It's not even ghost mold, though. It's like the remnants of your friends who've just lost their will to live mold.
I want to get into a lot of detail about that mold, because I think it's something else entirely. But good thing number 3.
Existential mold dread.
Yes. Absolutely. We will expand on that later. But it's like it's a supernatural J-horror movie that sort of becomes a fucking post-apocalyptic survival story.
Yeah, it's like every zombie film you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But we get there via ghosts and tech ghosts at that. Like, don't you love a Y2K ghost? This is Y2K ghosts at their most expansive.
This is what people thought New Year's Day was going to look like in the year 2000. Like, oh, fire everywhere, people missing, ghosts. Like, it's like everything's going wrong when the clocks turn back. Yeah, so those are 3 good things from a person who's never really seen this movie, is constantly confused by J-horror movies. We tried to do The Grudge on the podcast, and we just, like, couldn't grasp the plot.
There were just a lot of threads, and we were very not good at it.
The more we delve into J-horror classics, the more I'm realizing that might just be like a pretty common theme, because it's true about this one as well. We got a Game of Thrones amount of characters to follow.
Exactly. It's just like these threads have nothing to do with each other, and just go with it. And I was like, do they know each other? No, they do not.
But they will eventually, maybe, hopefully. No big deal, though. We totally recommend checking out this movie. If it's been on your J-horror watch list, you gotta seek it out. It's on Tubi right now. There's very few roadblocks between you and your next set of J-horror styled nightmares.
I mean, it is like 3 hours long on Tubi because you have to watch a million contact lens solution ads, but
yeah.
But it's free and legal.
意識、霊魂、何と呼んでもいいんだけど、それを受容できるエリアっていうのは 残念ながら無限大ではなかった。
インターネットって勝手に向こうから繋がっちゃうもんなの？
でもいつか必ずいっぱいになる。そしたら魂は別のエリア、つまりこっちの世界へ進出してくるしか方法がない。
どうしてみんないなくなるんだろう。
つまり回路は開かれた。
それ貸して。あげ。
Written and directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, Pulse is currently sitting at a 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb, 76% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Something I learned when just Wikipediaing like all of the names, just so we wouldn't sound like complete idiots in doing
we
this
will
episode.
probably still.
We're still going to, but not complete.
Okay.
Was that the actual literal translation of the Japanese title is Circuit, which I think makes more sense for this version of the film, the original version of the film.
I agree.
Especially when the characters kind of start to explain like what the fuck is happening and why we're seeing ghosts and why the alive human characters are being affected so. It's got this very simple explanation of like, you know, humans are connecting and bumping into each other and...
Why can't ghosts connect and bump into each other?
And then you have this like ghost in the machine who's fucking shit up and they're completing a different circuit altogether.
Yes. Yeah. No, I like that a lot. I think they probably should have kept it. Pulse, at the very least, sort of, I don't know, it gives you that idea that like there's been an evil transmission. Something's coming out of this and affecting you. So, I mean, Pulse does sound scary.
Pulse works too, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, Circuit just is a little more in line with the themes of the movie, which are way more in depth than I thought. I was expecting like, oh, some kids go to a scary website and it like haunts them and then they commit suicide because of it. And what we got was this philosophical exploration on the meaning of death and what death is and how death can be achieved while still being a living person.
Yeah, and loneliness and how profoundly alone the human existence is. And you're just like, fuck, guys, it's 11 a.m. I'm not ready for this.
Yeah, well, here's the other thing. At midnight, this movie would fuck you up because then you gotta go to bed afterward. You're like, great, I gotta deal with all these thoughts? Love it. At least now you have like another 10 hours.
At least now you have to ruminate on it for the whole day.
What are you talking about? I'm gonna dull it out with alcohol. It's gonna be great. Oh, yeah, what a weird movie. This, and I'm saying this right now, if you are I don't know why that was like a statement, but like if you are a huge fan of David Lynch's stuff.
Oh, it's so Lynchy.
Especially the like the craziest parts of Twin Peaks: The Return, you're gonna love Pulse.
Yeah, all of the ghost appearances and movements are so dreamlike.
Yeah.
And they're not even as digital as I was anticipating. Like there is some skittering and digital stuff, but there is some really weird layers on top of layers. Like their existence is on a different plane than this one, and they just so happen to be colliding. Like there was a circuit or a pulse, and there's another film on top of what, you know, humans are seeing.
Do you think that's kind of how people like look at the afterlife with ghosts anyway? Like if ghosts are real and they're walking around like and we can't see them, then it is kind of just like a layer that's on top of ours.
Yeah, like we're a tiramisu and they're...
What?
They're a different tier on the masu.
Okay, yeah, exactly like that. That's exactly where I thought this conversation would go.
I was just trying to make it, you know...
What a delicious descriptor, Kim.
Thank you.
Before we get into like the weirdness of the movie, we probably should talk a little bit about the plot. It is kind of a similar standard setup to some of your other J-horror movies. Like we've got a character who mysteriously, suddenly commits suicide, and best their friends can figure out it's because of a
obsession.
They eventually sort of pinpoint it to like a website that he was going to.
Do they pinpoint it to a website?
I was really just kind of being kind. Like I don't know that there's a lot of connective tissue between some of the biggest decisions and discoveries in the movie.
Yeah, because it's really weird how... So the first character who kills himself is Taguchi, and he is, friends with the team at the flower shop, and he's preparing a disc for them for this flower shop. And now I don't know if something he found in preparing this disc for, let me say again, the flower shop, he discovered this doorway to ghosts. And
or if it's just because he's a computer guy. Like, it's just like, oh, he's the computer guy. We
Yeah.
need somebody to prepare our flower shop disc. We'll get the computer guy.
we need our flower shop tech.
And in his midnight hours, he's been checking out the internet. The internet's still pretty new.
Yeah, and so Michi, our lead from that story. Now, this is one part of the story.
Okay.
So Michi, she goes to check on him because they haven't gotten the disc.
Yeah.
And he's there being all like aloof and weird. But, mostly himself, but still just a little odd and stiff and antisocial. And she goes to grab the disc, and then she goes back to see him. And, he's hung himself during that conversation. He's just like, oh, you know what? No more living for me. Thanks.
So, yeah, that was my first question for you. Whether you think that he had committed suicide in the short period of time that she was rifling through all of his stuff, or if she was communicating with his ghost.
Oh, I love that.
And when she discovered his body, that's the first time she realized that he'd been dead for a while.
No, so I think he definitely killed himself while she was in the other room, because while they were casually talking, he picked up a rope and was like walking around with the rope.
Fuck.
Yeah, so he was literally just like, just gotta get my rope ready to.
Ooh.
So from that, she gets the disc. They go back to the flower shop, and they're looking on the disc, and then they see this weird image where Taguchi is standing, staring at his computer, and then an exact image of that is on his computer screen. And that's kind of it for his thread and how he relates to, like, the computer stuff. But it's just like, is this a screen cap from that weird website? In our other story, we follow Ryosuke, who has just connected to the internet. He's really cool. Everybody's doing it. Just gonna get on there.
He's our California bro. Like, that's how we've been referring to him before we started recording.
And so he signs up via disc and dial-up connection to this film's version of AOL, which is Uranus.
Hey, man, maybe Uranus was like a real AOL style thing in Japan.
That's true.
We have no idea.
That's true. But it immediately takes him to the most haunted website ever.
Right? Like, he logs on, and it's just like, would you like to see a ghost? Like, first off, if I put that disc in my computer at like 13, I'd be like, this is
Why?
this is what I wanted.
Why?
Yeah. You get that little chicken plumb bob or whatever that Homer had? Like, yeah, just ghost after ghost, baby. Deliver them to my inbox.
Why? That was a real joy for me. The beginning of this movie was remembering my early internet days.
Well, because you get like full screen shots of watching people just go through user agreements to install the internet.
And he's like, oh, reading this, skip.
Yeah, like that would have been boring in 2007. But, it was crazy engaging in 2001 because it was like, ooh, I don't have the internet. Ooh, this is so fun to watch. And it's just as entertaining in 2023 when you're I remember those days.
I remember Windows 99.
Yeah.
My early internet days, I was so about ghosts and stuff. I had these things bookmarked, saved, of libraries that were allegedly haunted that had 24-hour webcams.
Whoa.
Yeah, and so I used to just, waste our family's phone line for hours upon hours of the day, dialing up to AOL and just watching a screen refresh every 30 seconds, trying to catch a ghost.
Well, yeah, and it was always scarier when it was like that weird refresh rate.
Because it wasn't a live, like it was a live stream, but the quality of the internet, you got a photo capture every 30 seconds. So you're just hoping to be the one that catches a ghost, and then you would screen cap it and email them, and then they had a folder of all of the screen caps that people had caught. And I so desperately, like, my 12-year-old goal in life was to get into that ghost captured from the live
You wanted
feed.
to get in that folder.
Yeah, I want it in there.
The Hall of Fame.
I think I submitted a few things, but I don't think they were anything.
They never got up in the folder?
No.
Bummer.
The internet got better before I got a ghost.
Like, this is a fly. I remember...
but there was a camera in the kids' room. I'm sorry. There was a camera in the kids' area, and there was like an area with like stuffed animals and shit. And you do not know how long I stared at those fucking like stuffed bunnies, just like trying to catch a move.
That's so great. maybe you remember this website. I'm not going to go off on a huge tangent, but like I was not nearly that cool. The closest I got to that was a early website that somebody had set up where you could control the electronics in his room. It was just one webcam set up in a room, and you could click a button to like turn his lamp on and off.
That's fun.
Yeah, and like
weird.
It's very weird, but like you'd be in there with like 8 people, and it's just like everybody's just like turning stuff on and off in the room.
Was he in there?
I never saw him.
Oh, like was he trying to get work done?
Yeah, I have no idea. Like it was like Eric's room, you know. Like it's probably just like somebody's office they had set up. Like don't go in there. You don't want to deal with it. There's a bunch of lights flickering. It's an art thing. It does seem like no one uses the internet for anything but getting haunted in the movie, right?
I mean, that engineer class, I'm sure, is doing something with the internet.
You'd think. None of the computer screens are on. They're all just like flipping through binders and pointing and looking very interested.
They also happen to come up with the thesis for the movie, though.
That's so cool, and we're going to have to come back to that several times. It looks like a screensaver. It is definitely just a screensaver that somebody programmed, but it's supposed to be a live updating thing that a graduate had completed at the school a few years ago, and it's just these little white orbs that bounce around the screen. The rules behind it are that if the orbs get too close to each other, they kill each other and disappear, but if they get too far apart, they're attracted back to each other, which is essentially just kind of a thesis for life in some regard.
Yeah.
You know how we're all murderers, you know?
But she basically said, and by she, I'm talking about Haru, who ends up being Ryosuke's kind of companion throughout his journey in the film. She's a science
Well, yeah, that's because his
engineer.
storyline is just like, I don't know how to work my computer and I need help because I'm getting scared.
Yeah, and she's like, okay, so click backspace.
He's like, wait, let me write all of this down. And it's like, we really watch him write down everything she says.
Oh, his storyline, he hovers and flips through magazines so many times. I so thoroughly wanted to put this film on 1.5 speed, and it was purely for him.
But then you'd come to scenes where we make dramatic leaps, and you're like, there's a whole scene we missed.
Slow down!
Yeah, just like there are parts where you're like, I need this to speed up, and then there are other parts where you're like, I need a deleted scene. Like, I am absolutely missing something.
But yeah, so this program is really interesting when we hear about it through Haru's interpretation that it's kind of how humans have utilized the internet. Like when she first goes to Ryosuke's house, she is like, oh, what made you want to get on the internet? Like you want to connect with people. And that's why she thinks this program is similar to humans, because in our daily life, we're getting farther and farther and farther from connecting to people. And then this innovation, the internet happens, and we can all kind of connect to each other at will. And it's really interesting now seeing how like we're starting to realize that the internet and this constant connectivity is pretty awful, because we're like ganging up on each other and going back to the dark ages in terms of like, you know, being judge, jury, and executioner all in 1 hour.
Well, even more than that, there is an idea in the movie that death is eternal loneliness. And like, man, damn, just like 20 years ahead of the curve on realizing that if we all spent all of our time just like watching social media, we might become very depressed by it.
And lonely.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by people, but you're very alone.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, like, the internet is completing the circuit between people, but it is killing us inside. There is so much going on in this movie. Like, it is a movie that you should watch in your undergraduate
I thought you were
philosophy
like your most
class.
soberest state.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, this is definitely not the kind of movie you're cracking beers and hooting and hollering through. Like, you put on your thinking cap and you rub your chin a whole lot while you're watching it, because man, so many ideas in this movie, and it's like the filmmaker is just like, oh, the internet, it explains it all. I've had this idea for 5 different movies, and like I can do it all in this one, and I don't know, but it talks about the idea that the afterlife has like the Earth has a finite amount of space.
Yeah, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Yeah, the ghosts will haunt the internet. That's the idea.
The ghosts will haunt the internet.
So it's like the cup is overflowing, and we are at a point now where we're starting to see ghosts, and they're interacting with us in the real world because they don't have anywhere else to go, and that they need somewhere to go. And I don't know if the movie ever necessarily 100% says that the internet is the place for them to go and inhabit, but that's such an interesting idea.
That's where I get confused, because they're definitely inhabiting the real world. Are they using the internet as a gateway between whatever places they're coming from to where they're going?
We got a lot of like Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Child logic jumping that we're not entirely sure. Like, is it that we're going through the internet? Are we using the internet solely? Is it just a conduit that is bridging the circuit toward the real?
Yeah,
I have no
or
idea.
is that how the ghosts who have now moved into this world are communicating with the living?
But
Because like they're trying to spook the living, right? They're trying to like get out of my way.
so no,
This is for me now.
there is a great moment in
but
the
also
movie,
don't
though,
die.
where I think it's Mishi. Maybe it's what's her name again? Junko. I think it's Junko. Right before she dies, she's like,
Also from the flower shop.
Also from the flower shop storyline, she's talking about the idea that ghosts wouldn't, because there's no more space in Ghostland, ghosts wouldn't want to kill people because it would just make more ghosts. And ghosts, well, I mean, on one hand, you would think they would, because you talk about death being eternal loneliness. You'd think that the ghosts would want buds to hang out with. But like, she's trying to say that what they're doing instead is trying to make people immortal by trapping them in their loneliness. And then she fades into ghost mold and sticks to the wall.
It's so confusing.
Then the wind comes in and blows her away and she becomes ashes. There's that, but
so everybody up to this point, and everybody that, becomes fate to this like loneliness haunting of seeing ghosts or going in the forbidden room, which we have not talked about yet, becomes this weird mold thing.
Yes.
Does that mean they're not ghosts and they're mold? Because what Junko says is, yeah, like, we're not going to become ghosts. They want us to be immortal. They don't want us to die. But they all definitely die. Some of them commit suicide. There's one really fucking fantastic suicide in this movie. Mm-hmm. It's so good.
Oh, you're talking about that girl who jumps off the silo.
It's just a random woman we've seen, like, in passing. She sets up a forbidden room. She's not a character we're following. And she just jumps off a silo in a single shot.
Yeah, in a completely unbroken shot. We see a woman climb up onto a railing, jump off, and hit the ground. It is incredible. Like, I don't know how they did it. It had to be like a King Kong style thing where it's a marionette and we're using like forced perspective. And like it looks...
I think there's an edit at some point when the camera like goes down because
You
there's
think
a
so?
weird warble. Yeah, there's got to be a... something.
It's real.
It is super
real
compelling,
good.
though. Yeah, it's really chilling.
Yeah.
But even more chilling is when we go back at the end of the film and she just, like, the space where she has committed suicide becomes just like this little vignette that we're, I don't know, talking about something haunting over. And she has become mold.
Yeah, it's I'm having a hard time.
What is the mold, John?
So, I mean, you could think of it as like a fate worse than death, right? Like being trapped.
But if ghosts are still, like, eternally lonely, then what is different than mold being eternally lonely? They're the same thing. Is
Right.
it just like one's a gas and one's a solid? Like,
Sure. I don't know. But so like there is kind of an idea that the internet is the new place that the ghosts would inhabit. And I love that idea because what it's doing is essentially treating the internet like
another plane.
Yes, like it's real estate, like it is something that you can inhabit. And it's fascinating because, well, one, I find it super interesting because it is those budding days of the internet.
Well, and humans are already thinking about that. Like, oh, can I upload my consciousness before my body dies? Can I go live, in Facebook's meta?
Yeah, but it's at a time before we really, really, really were treating it like an alternate reality. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, meta, people are actually spending a shit ton of time in virtual reality now. But even just with the amount of time people spend on the internet, like you kind of forget that it's not a real place, Mm-hmm. Like it's not a town that you visit where people live. It is just a make-believe spot where you check in and check out on stuff people have posted. And in the movie, there's a great, like, there's so many great little bits of discussion in the movie where one of them in particular, I think again, Mishi is talking about not knowing the difference between a real person and a ghost. Like, you may as well be a ghost on the internet. And so part of that is like, how would you ever know whether or not you're communicating with a real person or with a ghost? And even if you were communicating with a real person, it's not actually who they are. It's sort of a reflection of them. It's a ghostly image of a real person.
Ugh.
It's right. It is so philosophically weird and dark and I guess deep, depending on how much credit you want to give the people who made it. But it is.
There's also a moment where the flower shop boss is just talking about friendship and how like, fuck friends.
Well, So, like, that's the thing. I think it's just, like, it is about how it's impossible to make connections. And even when you think you have, it's just, like, the people, like, something that he says there is, like, making, you try and talk to a person, a friend, and then you end up hurting them. So then the friendship becomes soured, and, like, what was the point ever in making a friend? Like, having a friend and somebody you trust is supposed to be somebody that can say those things to you, but they hurt even more when somebody's being honest with you about maybe how shitty of a person you are or how sad you've been. And so what was ever the point of even building those connections?
If they'll break just as easy.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you think you're surrounded by people you trust and love and people that respect you or whatever, but like you're just as lonely as you were than when you were alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that he's the plant shop guy because he's basically just like, all I need are my fucking plants in my greenhouse and I'm good. Like, you'd expect him,
my rooftop,
right? You would expect him to just like throw his arms around two orchids and be like, "What's up?"
He disappears too, though.
Everyone disappears.
But it is really interesting thinking about that because it also says a lot about the human condition just in how the movie ends, because our two storylines eventually combine and Michi and Ryosuke come together like two dots.
They're practically like,
everybody else has lost and they're like the only two people left in Tokyo who are fighting to remain human, and they're naturally connecting. They don't know each other. They don't none of their backstories align. Their personalities are different. They come from two different worlds, but they come together and they try to stay together.
Yeah.
Even when, one has to go back because, his beloved has seen a ghost and is definitely going to turn into dust soon.
I always like it when a movie's got stuff that you can sort of like talk about and chew on afterward, but I don't 100% know the exact points it's trying to make.
It was a lot.
It's a lot of movie, yeah.
It is a lot.
So let's then at least talk about the Forbidden Room.
I want to talk about the Forbidden Room because horror movie logic, it is fucking great. It's got a simple, high level, really easy, clickbaity compellingness to it. It's red tape. Why? Always red tape. For some reason, it works at keeping ghosts out. The internet doesn't work, but red tape does.
Oh, I love the idea that you just need to seal off any surface so a ghost can't just like whoop slip through. Like, oh shit, we got a ghost came in through the cracks.
And the ghosts happen to just pick a room at random. I assumed it was rooms with a computer in them.
So I think there is a quick little backstory about a guy who realizes that there's something wrong with a room. Like, he can just feel a presence in it.
In like the construction yard,
yeah,
right?
And then he seals it off. He's the first person to get the red tape. Like, it's just visual stuff for the movie. It has nothing to do, like, it doesn't have to be red tape.
The origins of the red tape.
Yeah.
It does have to be red tape, John.
Does it?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, okay. So,
the printout says get red tape. The ghosts have decided that they like it.
The idea is that he has sealed off a room because a ghost has spilled over from the afterlife. There's no more space. He doesn't know where to go. And it's like, okay, cool. This is your room now. I'm going to seal it off so you can't get out. Seems a little cruel. Don't get me wrong. He's imprisoning a ghost. And then then there's another ghost. So he has to like seal off the whole building. He can't just seal off this whole room. But then the building gets broken down, gets demolished. The ghosts get out. And
they zoom in on a phone line connection. So
that's where the ghosts escaped to.
The ghosts
uploaded themselves online.
Slurp.
So I think the Forbidden Room is just a room where someone has trapped either a ghost or some ghosts. Like, I don't think there's no real importance to it other than the fact that the ghost hasn't been able to get out of there yet.
Mm-hmm.
But when our guy, Yabe, who is also working at the flower shop.
Also a computer guy.
Also a computer guy at the flower shop. He's the computer guy now. Finds the forbidden room. Don't know how he found it.
Nope.
Totally fine.
No
Don't
idea.
Care. Don't care.
Goes in.
Basically finds a note in Taguchi's apartment that just says the forbidden room. And then the next thing you know, he comes across a door that's taped up. He's like, well, that's gotta be my forbidden room. Walks his way downstairs and becomes just goes into a goddamn nightmare. I love.
It is the best scene of the whole movie.
Yeah, there's so much nightmare logic and so much just nightmare imagery in this movie. I think it's probably why we're talking about it like it's a David Lynch thing.
That is the most Lynchian part of the whole
yeah.
film as well, because he enters into this really well lit spotlight on a back wall, but it's been covered in the red tape. And I was thinking
it also has a couch there, it's an art installation.
So I was thinking the red tape was emulating a computer screen.
Okay.
Like a big screen on the wall
I like
almost.
that.
I don't know. That's
Whatever.
what I was thinking.
There's a lot going on. Yeah.
But so he's in there and he's already terrified because it's fucking creepy. And the sound effects we haven't talked about, but the sound and I guess you would call it the score. It's a lot of that water wheel thing that you can't make that sound with your mouth. But
Hold on a second. Let me just insert a quick little clip.
thank you.
That's what it sounds like.
And a lot of operatic ghosts.
I'm there.
It's really good. But you're already scared before anything starts happening. And then there's a fucking woman who's definitely a ghost, even though she's just plain old woman wearing a black dress and dark corner. And her movements.
It's unnerving.
She walks like slow motion, but there's a dancer-like quality to it. Almost like she's weightless or she's walking on the moon.
It looks great.
Like a plane she's not normally walking on.
Okay.
There's one point where you start to get used to her mannerisms and the mannerisms of her steps, and you're literally watching her foot step down on the ground, and then it's her knee buckles into a dance movement.
It's really good.
And you're like, I'm not okay.
I am not okay. Yeah, no, it's some real Red Room shit. We're in the fucking Black Lodge. He's hiding behind one of the chairs.
He
She
looks
kind of
underneath.
disappears.
There's no feet there, but then her fucking hands climb over the couch,
Right?
and she's like, peekaboo.
It's
bitch.
it's pretty goddamn scary. It works really, really well. And a lot of that definitely comes down to sound design and whatnot. There is so much room tone in this movie. It's the computers. It's supposed to be the ever-growing hum of computers, which I'm sure if you were a middle-aged person in the late 90s, early 2000s, drove you fucking insane. All of a sudden there's computers everywhere and they all sound like when they're not sounding like when you pick up the phone. There's just so much goddamn noise. And then occasionally the noise just occasionally the noise just disappears and you're dealing with a single isolated voice saying, help me.
Oh, and
You're
it's so fucking close in the mix, and you're just no, get out of my ear.
It's the scares in this movie are great. Yeah, it's really, really.
Were you ghosting a great?
I guess so. It just sounded like a fun thing to say. But yeah, it really, really effective scares. There's the occasional sort of creepy moment where you're like, okay, yeah, I've seen this before. Whatever, 2001 J horror, and then the next thing you know, you're peeing your pants.
Yeah, there was the final big ghost scare when Ryosuke finally enters the forbidden room. Even though he's like, this isn't right. Ghosts aren't real.
Well, and she says to him if you see a room that's got any red tape on it, you stay the fuck away from that room.
And everybody in his life has been haunted, and he keeps surfing on through, being like, nope, we're not alone. We're fine. We're never gonna die. And you think he's almost immune to it. His personality has the immunity to survive through this apocalypse, is what it is.
Yeah, he's just gonna continue to flat iron his hair through the apocalypse.
But then he goes into a forbidden room because no reason. And
well, the door opens all creepily. Wouldn't you check?
Yeah.
Might not.
After all we've learned,
Yeah.
he goes in and there's this really spooky, blurry ghost there who's like, hey, I'm real. And he's like, no, you're not. I'm going to hug you. And then he does. And then it's still there.
Yeah.
And we have to watch it come right up to the camera It's really, really uncomfortable.
Well, and like it's hard to really explain on the podcast, but like the ghosts have had a vision, like a look to them, and like this one especially too. Like he's, classic ghost. He's there but not there, kind of.
You can see through him.
Yeah, but as he leans into the camera, like his eyes materialize a little more. It is real fucking creepy, guys.
Yeah,
I really dug
and
it.
the movie, I will admit, is very sluggish. A lot of scenes go on too long. We see a lot of characters do a lot of boring things. But when the ghost scenes go on too long,
Oh, that's where it sings.
Yeah, like you just want out. Like you crawl in your skin at those moments. I think there's purpose to like the other scenes going on too long because it sets you up so that you're not going to escape these scary scenes because you know how the film is paced, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally, yeah.
And I thoroughly wanted out of that final ghost sequence. I was like, no, I don't need to see him come closer. No, thank you.
And the last shot of the movie, like they've escaped, fucking zombie style. They've escaped to a boat, and they're just gonna like continue pinging around the ocean until they find more survivors. Like you get the impression that the 5 people on this boat that they've found are the last people alive in Japan. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And we just continue to pull out up into the sky, and we just see this boat sort of like bouncing around the ocean, kind of like one single dot in that computer screen, just like walking around looking for another dot. Like it's constantly, even in the like, and this is an interesting thing too about apocalypse movies that I don't think never ever really gets addressed. People are always looking for other people, like in a zombie apocalypse movie.
That's so true.
And it's not like I need a cure, I need medicine. I mean, sometimes, but a lot of it's just like, we need to find more survivors. You're like, why? Well, because we need to rebuild civilization. Why? Like, it's just because that's just what we do. Like, we just constantly seek out connections with other people.
Wow, that's so profound.
But isn't that's also why like they built the internet, like it was to connect, and it's been our downfall. Like, they predicted it in 2001 and we're living it today in 2023.
Yeah.
It's a weirdly I don't necessarily want to say like profound, but it is. I guess I just don't want to oversell the message of the movie because it is also just a really cool J-horror scare movie. But it's not. I was not expecting how much of a conversation it wanted to have about humanity.
I do not remember the Americanized one making me think, "Wow, humans are destined to be alone forever." But now I need to rewatch it because
that doesn't sound like an emotion Americans want to have at the movie theater.
No, the emotion they want to have is like, "Oh, so if you reunite the dead ghost with its mother, it'll go away and everybody will be happy."
Can I tell you what my main emotions are at a movie theater? Salty, sweet. Like those are my emotions.
Spooky, dark.
Yeah, exactly, right? And like if I can get distracted for a half a second with an explosion or a scary face, I'm good. Like that's all I want at the movie theater. I don't want to sit here and get sad and think about death and stuff. But that's exactly what Pulse did for us. Kim, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I just definitively, have we decided, like, are they using the internet as a connectivity device, or is it a location? Because why the Forbidden Room? Why isn't the Forbidden Room like a chat room on the internet?
Whew. Good question. Maybe the Forbidden Room is the dial-up connection the ghosts need to get into the internet. I don't know.
Or out.
Or out of.
I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 4.
I'm also a 2.5 out of 4.
Yeah.
I'll say that's a strong 2.5 out of 4.
It is a strong 2.5 out of 4. It's just a very long, slow movie.
Yeah.
But the themes and the actual scare sequences themselves, top notch.
Oh yeah, really well made movie. There's the occasional like shot that is just brilliant and like gorgeous. So like it's a really well made movie. But yeah, it is quite long sometimes.
There's some meandering, and a lot of the characters just like stand here and then go over and sit here and then go over and stand here. Yeah. And then look, a curtain. Like there's a ladybug on the control panel.
Okay.
Let him go. I'm actually really glad this recording has gone well because before we recorded this, our dog ate our plug.
The power, yes. The cord on the adapter for the mixer.
Which is a very specific cord that would have taken, several weeks to order in. And luckily, John was able to tape the shit out of it. And so far, so good.
Yeah, spliced it together okay. Regardless, though, Pulse 2.5 out of 4 from the both of us. Looks like the critics were maybe around the same rating, maybe just a little bit higher than us. But let us know what you thought of Pulse, either the American remake or the 2001 original. We're very interested to hear what you have to say about either of those.
And
movies.
we'd also love to hear some of your J-horror recommendations. We're going to be checking out a few in theme for these couple of episodes, and we got another one coming at you soon. But until then, I'm Kim.
I'm John.
Stay
creepy.
It appears you made it out alive, but we'll get you next time. Help us to grow the horde. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. More terror can be found lurking on our website, nofspodcast.com. Until next time, stay creepy, fiends.